Call the meeting to order for the budget, session, budget amendment review. So it is March 1st, 2022. Council members present, Diane Dominguez here, Cara McFerren.
Yeah, yes, here.
Omar Martinez.
Here.
Diane Beranek.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Where am I? Sorry.
No,
Folks.
you're okay.
So we can just go ahead and start the work session. So let's get going on the budget amendments.
So what I have before you, again, is there's a top worksheet, and this is just to help explain the line items that are highlighted on the budget amendment. And did I not? Or is it?
It's
Oh, you know what? I have yours right here, Karen, because I put theirs and theirs, and
people.
you had picked yours up earlier. My bad.
Okay, I'm like,
Nope.
Did you say April Fools?
I think
I literally just thought it's April. No.
Oh my
Sorry.
God.
That's how busy my life has been.
I lost a whole month.
I know. Wouldn't be the first time.
February was both entirely too long and entirely too short.
Yeah.
Okay, so with the amendment, this top page is a worksheet, and it's something that I've done before. This is just to help us better understand the line items, what makes up the line item with that number. So just to get started, under the public safety program, the police department, they received a $25,000 grant that was not in the, I should go back and say the budget amendment purpose is because it wasn't originally in the budget that was approved. So now we're going back and amending it. Then the fire department, they received a Ryan grant for the air packs for $95,000. So we have to amend to show the revenue coming into the budget. And so then that gives us a revenue total of $120,000, which again, it reflects on line item 12. And then you have on line 15, the total, a revenue amended amount. And then we move to the expenditure portion. And so then again, we have revenue coming in. So the expenditure we have for the air pack equipment. The air pack equipment was actually $167,260. I rounded up because I just had not had an opportunity to see. Sometimes there's some additional pieces too. And I believe they signed a contract to have the items serviced. So I just rounded it up to give them that capacity in there. So they had some additional and we didn't have something in there. Again, budget amendments are somewhat estimating too. So then on the library building upgrade, it's a part of the, I'm sorry, let me go back. With the air pack fire equipment, I do not have a list of equipment items yet from the police department that they're purchasing with their grant. So that'll be a future amendment once they get to working through that. So I just wanted to make sure I clearly communicated that's the reason why we don't have an expenditure to offset that revenue yet, because we don't have that information as to what they just received it and they're working through it. So then the next program is culture and recreation. And that is where the library building upgrade is going to, we're expensing, we're making amendment to expense for the recent improvement. And that'll be on your tonight for the contract recommendation, as you've seen in your packet. And so then you go down to the line item 19, again, that shows that amount there. Capital projects. So we were underway with the engineer service and Max and Rainbow. At the time last year when we did the budget, There was kind of uncertain as to when or how the weather would look as to when they would get started on doing some of that. So I went ahead, and this is an estimate, because I'm thinking we're probably gonna run into some more engineer costs this year versus into the next fiscal year. If we don't, we're okay. We have it in our capital projects line item revenues, but again, it's estimating that there's a possibility. City Hall Phase 1, it ran over the original budgeted year. Our timeline went further into the new fiscal year. So again, that was still within, I think, again, I think we were over by about 40,000 in our budget. So that would include that there as well. But it was in our capital projects already for the revenue. So on line item 23, that's reflecting the total under capital projects. And then you have your total expense for 495,000 for the amendment. So then you have revenues over under expense. So what that is on line 29. So we have more expenditures than we've taken in revenue so far with. So then that's what reflects the change in our year-end balance from the original 14,000 and change. Yeah, 14,323,875 to now 13,948,875. Please keep in mind though, I have some notes here about some transfers that we will have to get into the next amendment, and that will make up for the revenue that we don't have for these expenditures right now. So one is Chief Sickles did provide me an email in August that they needed to purchase the air packs. We're gonna get dinged on this one because the purchase came before the amendment came. But again, we'll just make the note that we're gonna continue to work on making sure that we get amendments before we make the expenditures. And so we've got the amendment, and now I just need to clarify with Chief, and I want to make sure that the trustees are on board. Their recommendation was they had a request from Marilyn Irie, and they wanted to use the funds that came from Marilyn Irie's request to make up the difference because we took in 95,000 from a grant. And so then the additional difference of 75,000, we need to identify where that revenue is going to be coming from. Typically in a situation like this, we would probably see it from equipment, but because they had a request that was specific to purchase equipment for that purpose, then that's certainly something they can do to bring that over. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page before the transfer happens.
So in other words, the 75 would come out of the trust and we call it
Trust and agency.
trust and agency account.
Yep.
If you look at what we reviewed last week.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'll put the next budget amendment together with that. But again, I just, as we've talked, we want to make sure that we include and have the input. So we all understand where the additional revenue is then going to come in to cover the entire expenditure for the equipment.
And they have just under, cash on hand in that account, just under 369,000. And then they have
And the
a
trust and
10,000.
agency.
Yeah, and then they've got a $10,000 investment. So
And then the Marilyn Irie is the person that provided the funds, the
Mhm.
donor.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because as I understand it, all donations go to trust and agency.
Yes. Yeah.
All fire department donate or all donations,
donations.
just everything.
For the fire.
For the fire
Or
department.
for the fire.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, like library donations go into their trust and agency.
Okay.
Each group that would receive donations, we can create that
Great.
trust and agency for their dollars.
But in the general fund, under each line item, you'll see fire department has all those accounts.
Yes,
Yes.
perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, that's all part of the general fund.
Thank you.
You've got it.
I mean,
So-
you get there was at one time a debt and complex trust and agency. You got the fire trust and agency, you got the library trust. Park and Rec has a trust. So, yeah, there's,
Perfect.
And they're the primary accounts that receive donations. You know, maybe at one time we had it's still there, it's inactive. We had a K9. So they took donations for the K9 unit and things like that. So,
Right.
so again, just to follow up on the notes below, the transfers that we're gonna need to do on the next amendment would pertain to the revenues for the rest of the air pack equipment. Then we'll know more with the police department, where they're at with their budget, their expenditures. And it's quite possible, I think we talked about this, it'll come up, is creating a reserve account for the police department. So in case they don't expense all of that, then we can reserve it so they have that money to carry over for, because I think with Ryan, they have to have it spent within, I think, a year from the time they receive it. Yeah, so. But again, if we were to communicate to them, if we're waiting on equipment or just keep them, you know, in the loop as we're waiting on purchases or things. And then the library trust, I had just visited with Allie before the meeting. I just, again, I want to make sure the library board, she has it in minutes that they've made the motion to have the funds come from their trust. But I just want to include that in our documentation, again, too. That way we've got it well documented from these individual departments that this is where the revenues are coming from, and that we're all on the same page, that we agree that when we make the budget amendment, that that's where those revenues are going to be transferred in from.
Is it also Irie? No, okay.
This will be the rest of the
Rest,
Irish money
yeah.
for the library.
This is your first portion, you did your HVAC
Our
update.
HVAC, we did the youth department, and then this is the last bit.
I think it was 300.
300,000.
Yeah, yeah, and then likewise with the fire and the ambulance, theirs was split. Because she had originally wrote her estate when they were still called, I had to go back through some archives, and I even had to call Diane on this, because with the park, it was still called the tree committee.
Yeah.
And then with the fire department, it hadn't recognized the ambulance as it just was fire and rescue. And so then, you know, they provided me the history that the rescue portion had become the EMS, the ambulance side. So, so we had gotten all of that kind of figured out. So they divided up their requests between the two departments to be used. So.
Very, very generous.
Yeah. She was a very giving lady. Okay, so any questions? Sorry, we're gonna end up having a break before we go into meeting, but.
Do you anticipate more
Mhm.
amendments by June?
Yeah. I would anticipate at least 2 more amendments before year end.
Okay.
And the reason being, and Dave can talk about this too. So historically, when amendments were done, you just did them at the year end. You had to make sure before your fiscal year ended that you had your amendments done before you closed out your books. And now it is, you have to create the amendment before the money is spent. And in previous audits, that had not come up, and we continued to do that. Well, again, now we're learning that we need to have these amendments before the expenditures happen, just like the year-end transfers. So again, I stay in communication with Taylor, and he knows to expect that. We're not hiding it, and we'll continue to work on, you know, getting these things amended or in transfers done in a timely manner. So it's, again, something new to work with. It's interesting.
yeah, I mean, when I started, it was one budget amendment a year is all you ever did at the end of the year.
Wow.
But with all the changes with GASB and things, I mean, the state, even when they were doing the audit a couple of years ago,
They never
said you
never
had to have
commented.
more than the one.
Yeah.
It's just when we made the switch over to private, that he's looking at this, you know, all the new rules by GASB, and he's asking us to follow those, we plan on doing that, so.
Which is.
Well, in the long run, it'll help us, right?
Absolutely, I think so. I think it has a better, I think it's better to track it, you know, just like you're saying.
It's better, I think, to do it as you go, because sometimes cities, you know, if you did one at the end of the year, it was a huge budget amendment, and we were like, okay, well, you know, you're trying to think back.
Yeah.
How you spent it, now you know exactly as you kind of move along, so I think this is a much better way to do it. It's just-
And I know as Dave's working through budget with staff, you know, he's taking that opportunity to educate, because, you know, staff was the same way. I mean, they thought it was one budget amendment a year, so he's taken the time to educate them. If you foresee that we're gonna have that expense, we've got to, if it's not in that budget, we've got to get it amended before we can make the expense, transact on the expense, so.
And that's kind of nice, because if you wait until June, that's halfway kind of between the time we get our property tax money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of, you know,
Yeah.
a little bit of a cringe there, because then what are you gonna do until September?
Yeah,
You know, you've got all this money that has to funnel through until you get reimbursed, until we get the property tax in September. Yeah.
Yeah, we operate on some pretty large budgets with half, you know, our 810 levy is more, you know, less than half of what we, you know, expense, so being able to stay in, and I mean, I commend our departments for the work that they do. They go out like the fire and the library and parks and rec. I mean, they spend quite a bit of time researching grants and trying to fill the, you know, with grant dollars. So I know Allie's blowing up my email, you know, about every few months, and got another one, and then, so, and that's where because she just got another one, and so I know we'll have some others to work through for that amendment. And if she's gonna tie it into a specific project, then that's what's good, is because then we can state that it's for this project, so, yeah.
I appreciate all of the departments who do that. And I know it's a lot of work for sometimes small payouts, but nickel and diming it, right?
Yep.
And I appreciate Lee and David too for learning the new processes and implementing them and working with us as we are learning. So very much appreciated.
I do have a question. I don't know if it's appropriate for this work session, but I was just thinking last night when I was trying to go to sleep, for the phase 2 of our renovation, that's in the next budget or not? I don't remember talking about it on Tuesday or last Thursday.
Well, we haven't got to the capital project portion of the budget, all we did was the general fund. at
Oh,
this point.
well, there we go.
So like next week, we'll be talking about our enterprise funds, and I don't know, will the capital improvements be part of next week as well?
It'll be utility and.
It'll be road use tax for streets, it'll be water, electric, sanitation, wastewater.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then projects.
Your debt, so you have TIF, you have debt, you have road use tax, you have your capital projects, and those are special funds. So, because when we get through all of this, we'll go through the Iowa budget form, and then you'll see, which I'm sure if you went out and looked at our budgets, you know, based on the program, so you have your general fund, and then you have those special revenue funds. And local option sales tax is the other one. So, and really with that, local option sales tax is set by the ballot. So when we receive the revenue coming in from local option sales tax, we had a ballot that was set, we reset it just a couple of years ago for another 10 years. And it's a third. And we talk a little bit about that during budget time. So we really don't have, because the ballot drives. What we have to do as a council has to do with the budget is we have to identify every year how those dollars are being spent. Well, the ballot already identifies a third going to the library for their use, a third going to parks.
That was half of the third.
Half of a third,
Sorry,
sorry.
the library.
Half of the third.
Split half of the third.
Yeah, they split half of a third, which again goes, so they can use it within the purpose to operate. And likewise with the park. And then you have the other third that goes to capital projects. And then the other third is to go to general fund to be used for those economic development projects, so.
But most of the general fund revenue is property tax.
No, about,
It's about half.
It's, okay, so it's a little over 600,000.
It's 650, and then, because I have $1 million, I have $1,017,000 that comes into the general fund with the tax levies.
I was thinking just, wasn't thinking the other one this year.
Yeah,
So-
so,
Okay.
It's tax.
Not quite.
So it's a lot, well,
Yeah.
it tips the scale towards property tax, what we gather for property tax, correct?
so, so we just recently did that on that tax levy. So when we set the tax levy, we set how much, we set our 810 levy, we're gonna request all of our 810 levy. And I don't have it right here in front of me, but yeah, it's a little over 600,000.
656,000
Yeah.
roughly, I think.
And then the other levies we can levy for are tort liability, so that's the insurance to cover our buildings. The maximum that we can levy is like $40,000, which we all know our insurance costs more than that, but we'll take what we can get, right? Because it's a small percentage of you get assigned, and we'll go through this when we look at the budget, but you're only allowed a percentage, so it's like maybe 20%. And then you move down into your employee benefits, we're able for all of the general fund employees, and they're able to levy for employee benefits such as your IPERS, your health insurance, and so we're able to levy for that. But again, the maximum levy on that is, again, it's real small. So we expense way more than that, but every little bit counts. So by the time we get done by levying those additional, that when I say we can levy those without a referendum. Anything else that we wanted to utilize more tax dollars for, then you would have to create a referendum to go to a ballot. I know that there's been some different talks about maybe like for community programming. I think we talked about the library, a referendum one time. So there's different line items that you can, but it has to go for the property taxpayers would have to vote to have a percentage of taxes go. So right now with
School
the,
district just did one.
yep, they did. So we're at 810 for just property tax, and then with all those other special levies, that's what puts us at that 14%. So that right now is the city of West Liberty is able to levy about a little over 14% of the property tax dollars to come back to the city to help offset expenditures, just in the general fund, not in the business activity. If that makes sense. So,
And then on the debt service side, there are certain things that are considered, they're essential corporate purposes, that you can incur debt without having to go to vote of people. But there are things that you do have to go to a vote for, some things that you may do, so.
I've watched this budget video like 10 times. And what you all just explained probably is so much better than what that video
It needs to be turned
explained.
into a schoolhouse rock.
Yeah, right?
I'm just a bill situation.
Yeah.
But, you know, things
So I'm
like,
gonna get a costume.
things like, you know, roads and things, you know, road work can be like an essential corporate purpose. They've got a list of, it's been so long since I've used it and sold data, and I can't remember them all, but there are certain things the council can make that decision, because you've been elected to make that decision for the public. But there are certain things that we do have to go back. And, you know, if we were gonna do certain types of bonds, that you do have to get a vote of those to approve those for certain things.
And when we get to talking about debt, this, as a part of the next budget work session, so we have a general obligation for City Hall and for the library that we have, and we levy that. That's another tax levy that, just like you were talking about, which will drive that bottom 14% up. I believe last year with our capital improvement plan, council had passed that we weren't gonna go any more than, I think it was either 15 or 16. I gotta look back through my notes. Because again, they're with the taxpayers in our community, trying to be fiscally responsible and say, you know, look, we don't wanna take any more than what we need, and we're gonna set this and we're gonna work within the, I think what it was 2.25 above what we could levy out for. Nothing more than 2.25. So where the maximum tax says, you know, 3%, and then council said, no, we're gonna stay at 2.25. So, and I think we're gonna be fortunate enough, we're gonna be able to stay within. There was at one time, I think it was fiscal year 2018-19, I think it went clear up to like 17%, but again, that was where that additional levy came in that caused us to have more money in our debt service now. And so, again, we're gonna work through bringing that debt service down, so. Yeah, great. It's a fun puzzle.
It's interesting every year trying to make a balance.
I think that word is relative in this case, whether or not it's fun or not. It's probably fun for you.
It's a challenge and an opportunity.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I could choose some other choice language for that.
Well, I think I shared with Allie, you know, after our work session, it felt, it was a really good to have a balanced budget presented and not have to, I mean, because, you know, Cara and Diane and Allie, I mean, and I know you with your experience, I mean, in the last 3 years, we've had to, you know, send the library and the park and rec back to say, no. But I will commend Allie. She's done a good job of understanding. She's been really good to work with. She's not putting high expectations out there. She has her wish list. And then, you know, then she comes back and she'll tell me, she goes, okay, but this is probably more reality, but we were able to.
You just gotta prioritize it
I
every
know,
year.
yeah, but we were able to work with her on hers a little bit this year, that we didn't have to say, okay, Allie, now you gotta go take, I think there was one time we had to cut out like 250,000.
That was a lot.
Oh, my goodness. Kudos, Allie.
And likewise with the park and rec, I mean, they went for years without upgrading playground equipment, and, you know, and they got after getting those fundraisers done, and so again, I would commend Nick, because, you know, he went and found revenue where we couldn't, and then we were able to get, and just learning how to use that local option sales tax more to benefit those things. So, yeah. So that's what makes it fun, when you can give the community those quality of life programs, and you can also still provide them the public safety, and not have to take away, you know, yet, you know, from those things. So I don't want to get too excited and say, yeah, it's all good, and then duration.
Yeah, right.
Wonderful. Any other questions or comments by council or anybody else in the room? I should close the work session. I'll do this.